Second half of the 16th century and the first half of the 17th century, Europe witnesses a series of bloody conflict over religious disputes. These conflicts took place between the growing Protestants and the already established Catholics. Following the Peace of Augsburg, signed in 1555, Lutheranism became a legal religion within the Holy Roman Empire, and the ruler of each state was now legally allowed to determine its religion. Although the passage of the Peace of Augsburg was a huge step for the Lutherans, non-Lutheran Protestants such as Calvinists were left struggling for rights against both the Catholics as well as the now legal Lutherans. France saw internal conflict between the Huguenots, the Catholic Counter-Reformation, while Catholic Spain and Protestant England fought to defend and expand their sides of the Christian spectrum. In addition to Spain's dispute with England, they struggled keeping the Netherlands under their Catholic influence and control. Lastly, international war broke out over almost all of continental Europe, creating one of the largest, bloodiest religious conflicts in European history, known as the 30 Years' War. France, during this period, although having an established monarchy, was essentially controlled by three of the richest family: the Bourbon family, the Chatillon family, and the Guise family. The Bourbons and the Chatillons were sympathetic towards Protestants, while the Guise family was strictly Catholic and had family ties that allowed them to control France as king. In addition to these families, power lied in the hands of the regent to the throne, the powerful and rich woman, Catherine de' Medici. While the Guise family seemed to have the most control over France, Calvinism was growing within the country, and many of the aristocrats and townspeople sided with the Huguenots against the Guise family. In other words, the Calvinist movement gave justification to the political resistance, and the political resistance justified the religious movement. Together, this group of discontented people looked to have territorial sovereignty, much like what was taking place in the Holy Roman Empire. Leading these peoples were Conde and Coligny of the Bourbon and Chatillon houses. Seeing the political and religious unrest, Catherine tried to bring together the Protestants and Catholics at the Colloquy of Poissy, even passing the January Edict, which gave freedom of worship to all Protestants. In response, the Duke of Guise initiated the Massacre of Versailles, where he brutally murdered peaceful worshippers in Champagne, which jump-started the war. Catherine, out of fear, was forced to side with the Duke and his family. The battles raged on through what are considered to be three separate wars. The Duke of Guise was killed, but consequently, so was Conde, and Coligny took over the military, an act that proved successful for the Protestants, as he was much more equipped to lead an army. The internal wars seemed to be coming to an end when the Peace of Saint-Germain-en-Laye was signed, granting religious freedom to each French territory, but Catherine still dreamed of a Catholic France, and without Guise influence. She favored balance more than anything, and with a growing Bourbon power, she was forced once again to take side with the Guise. This seeming end to the hostility was abruptly interrupted at the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. Huguenot Henry of Navarre married the king's sister, Marguerite of Valois, which struck fear within Catherine. Concerned that the king may fall into Henry's Calvinist ideas, she convinces him to massacre many French Huguenots as possible. Within 3 days, 20,000 Protestants were brutally murdered upon King Charles IX's orders, which were directly influenced by his mother. A while after the massacre, Henry of Navarre rose to power. When his childless cousin Henry III died, he ascended to the throne and brought his Huguenot ideas with him. The Catholic League had reversed any rights that the Protestants held in France, but Henry supported tolerance and saw much support from the people. Finally, ending the French internal conflicts, the Edict of Nantes was issued, granting complete freedom to the Huguenots. Following was the Treaty of Vervins, which ended the fight between France and the Catholic League, assisting Spain. The French wars of religion had finally come to an end, and Henry IV left a legacy and a clear pathway for Cardinal Richelieu to take over. In addition to the conflict with France, Spain saw struggle against Dutch independence. The Spanish territory of the Netherlands was proving to be one of the wealthiest sections of all of Europe, and with pride in his prosperous territory, Spanish King Philip II left it to return to Spain, leaving power in the hands of his half-sister, Margaret of Parma, along with a Council of State led by Cardinal Granvelle. Granvelle's goals included checking Protestant gains with internal church reforms, establishing a central government, and achieving political and religious uniformity throughout the entire territory. The Protestants of the Netherlands were displeased with Granvelle's rule, and Count Egmont and William of Orange succeeded in removing him from power. Following, Philip II decided to begin enforcing the Council of Trent decrees, oppressing Protestants. Louis of Nassau came in and led the opposition with the Compromise, a national pledge to resist these decrees. A Calvinist revolt erupted in response to being called beggars by Margaret. Even French and German Protestants were called in to initiate a full-scale rebellion. Philip, in turn, sent the Duke of Alba with 10,000 troops, crushing the rebellion and establishing a dictatorship worse than that of Granville's. While William of Orange remained exiled in Germany, he gained the support and unity of Holland, Zeeland, and Utrecht, and together they allied with the English sea beggars and stormed the ports of Netherlands, going to extent of flooding their own country, forcing Alba to abandon his position of power. The provinces of the Netherlands unified against Spain and published the Pacification of Ghent, the Dutch version of the Peace of Augsburg. With this, William of Orange took control of the revolt. Spain declared him an outlaw, placing a bounty on his head, but the Dutch decided to renounce Philip as their ruler, marking Spain's last hope at controlling Europe entirely. Dutch independence was finally recognized with the signing of the Treaty of Westphalia following the 30 Years' War. Spain, being the great Catholic power that it was, always seemed to be looking to expand its Catholic influence, especially on its Protestant neighbor England. Philip's plan to restore Catholicism to England involved removing Queen Elizabeth I from the throne and replacing her with her half-sister, Mary, Queen of Scots. At first, Elizabeth tried to ignore Philip's constant attempts and Mary's desire for the throne, but after a few attempts on Elizabeth's life, she was forced to execute Mary. In addition to foiling Spain's conversion plans, England assisted Spain's overseas enemies such as the Netherlands in their fight for independence. Philip grew tired of being defeated by the Queen and felt he had no other choice than to send the Spanish Armada, expected to severely outnumber and outrank England's navy. But little to his knowledge, England's navy had numerous advances and destroyed Spain's Armada in a sneak attack in the French harbor of Calais. This embarrassing defeat on Spain's part signified the end of its dominance in Europe. The 30 Years' War was the last and most destructive of the wars of religion. It held Catholics against Protestants, Calvinists against Lutherans, and essentially shaped the map of what we know today to be Northern Europe. It all started in the divided 360 states of the Holy Roman Empire. Each held its own sovereignty thanks to the Peace of Augsburg, which created pretty even division of Catholic and Protestant states. With this division grew conflict between Lutherans and Calvinists, as well as conflict between liberal and conservative Lutherans. Calvinism grew to be the official religion of Palatine, thanks to its elector, Frederick III. Palatine then became allies with many of Spain's enemies. In contrast, Bavaria became the military and ideological center of the Counter-Reformation, hosting many active Jesuits and the starting place for Maximilian, Duke of Bavaria's Catholic League. Here, Count Johann von Tilly established a great army, setting the stage for the worst of religious wars. The 30 Years' Wars went through three distinct stages, starting with the Bohemian period. When Ferdinand, a fervent Catholic, ascended to the throne of the Holy Roman Empire, he revoked Bohemian Protestant freedoms. The Protestants were severely unhappy and reacted with the defenestration of Prague, where regents were thrown from story-high windows into manure. The Bohemians would not respect Ferdinand's place on the throne and instead declared Frederick V of Palatine as their ruler. This quickly escalated into international war. Spain quickly allied with Ferdinand, and Protestant John George I of Saxony joined the alliance in hopes of gaining Palatine territory. The war raged on until the Battle of White Mountain, where Ferdinand's army defeated Frederick's and successfully re-Catholicized Bohemia. The second phase, the Danish period, came in direct consequence of what happened in Bohemia. The people feared re-Catholicization of the Holy Roman Empire, including Christian IV, Lutheran King of Denmark, who wanted to hold influence over the coastal towns of the empire. Because of his fears and the pressures by England, France, and the Dutch, he opened conflict. Sadly, Maximilian's army embarrassed the Danish forces and they were forced to retreat. Ferdinand realized he did not trust Maximilian's successes and turned to Protestant Wallenstein, who easily broke through the Protestant resistance. With his successes, Ferdinand issued the Edict of Restitution, making Calvinism strictly illegal and essentially reinstalling all Catholic-favoring aspects of the Peace of Augsburg, striking fear in all enemies of Catholicism, the Habsburg Empire. Soon after these striking Habsburg successes, the war entered the Swedish period. Sweden, a unified Lutheran nation, was ruled by King Gustav Adolphus. Gustav became the leader of the Protestant forces in the war, which opened up the Swedish front. Sweden's initiatives were simple: to defend Protestantism, but more importantly, to receive financial aid from France's Cardinal Richelieu, who wished to limit the power of the Habsburgs. Thanks to Gustav's military genius, the Swedish found astonishing victory in Brittenfeld, which was the turning point of the war, essentially reversing the favor of the Protestants. Unfortunately, at the Battle of Lutzen, Adolphus was killed by Wallenstein's troops, but soon after, Wallenstein himself was executed by Ferdinand for making bargains with the Protestants. This proves that although the 30 Years' War is considered a war of religion, it is truly a war based on greed and political gain. Finally, the German states reach a compromise with Ferdinand in the Peace of Prague. Although the stakes had been settled and peace may have been able to remain, the Swedes still wanted more, leading to the last and final phase of the war. The Swedish and French phase was arguably an unnecessary part of the war. France openly joined the war to help take down the Habsburg Empire, which they despised. Together for a remaining 13 years, the Swedish and French armies constantly attacked and looted Germany, who was unable to fight back. This last phase settled for the German death toll at 1/3 of their population from before the war. In 1648, the hostilities of the 30 Years' War finally ended with the Treaty of Westphalia. This treaty reasserted the Peace of Augsburg, gave Calvinists final recognition as a legal religion, saw the independence of Switzerland and the Netherlands, and allowed Prussia to emerge as the most powerful state in all of Europe. This treaty finally put an end to the age of religious wars, allowing Europe to enter a time of peace and religious toleration.